She was pushed at the bar hard enough to spill her drink. This wasn't an accident, it was a shove. And the man who did it didn't even apologize. He just smirked and sneered. "Watch where you're standing." For a split second, the bar went quiet. You could feel the air change. Then, just as quickly, the noise rushed back in laughter, loud music, the clinking of glasses. She steadied herself on the counter, her knuckles white for just a moment before she relaxed. Calm, controlled, she took a slow breath and said quietly, "Excuse me." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the noise for him. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Relax, it's crowded in here." His friends, standing a few feet away, watched the whole thing, enjoying the show. She didn't argue, she didn't raise her voice or cause a scene. And that, oddly enough, seemed to irritate him more than anything she could have said. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a low growl. "You hear me? You don't belong in places like this." His words hung in the air, a clear challenge. The bartender glanced over, his eyes showing a flicker of concern, but then he looked away, busy polishing a glass. That's the thing about power imbalance, it has a sound. It's the sound of confidence backed by the assumption that no one will intervene. It's the sound of a bartender looking away. She picked up her glass, the one that hadn't shattered on the floor. She took a small, deliberate sip. "I'm fine," she said. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The man bumped her again. This time, there was no pretense of it being an accident. It was deliberate, a clear act of intimidation. From the other side of the room, someone whispered, "Damn." Another voice muttered, "She should just leave." But she didn't. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she adjusted her jacket. It was dark, plain, with no logos or insignia visible. It looked ordinary. "What's your problem?" The man finally snapped, his frustration boiling over. She finally met his eyes, her gaze steady and unwavering. "You're blocking the exit." He scoffed, a look of disbelief on his face. "You're giving orders now?" Around them, a subtle shift occurred. Phones, which had been in pockets, slowly started coming out. Not to call for help, but to record. The bartender, perhaps sensing things were about to escalate beyond his control, finally spoke up. "Sir, let's just take it easy." The man waved a dismissive hand at him. "I'm good. Mind your own business." She glanced at her watch. A tiny, almost insignificant movement, but that one small action changed everything. Her posture straightened. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't aggressive. It was ready. Then, from the far end of the bar, a man stood up abruptly. Then another, a group, near the door, who had been laughing loudly just moments before, fell silent. Heavy, rhythmic footsteps approached from the entrance. The sound was distinct, purposeful. A senior officer in a crisp, formal dress uniform entered, flanked by two escorts. They didn't rush, they didn't shout. They simply walked in, their presence instantly commanding the entire space. The bar didn't just get quiet, it froze. The officer's eyes scanned the room, his gaze sweeping over the crowd until it locked onto her. He stopped. Everyone noticed. The music seemed to fade into nothing. He stepped forward, stopped a few feet from her, and brought his hand up in a sharp, clean salute. The gesture was filled with respect. "Ma'am," he said, his voice clear and formal. "Apologies for the delay." The room went completely, utterly silent. The only sound was the hum of the neon sign outside. The man who had pushed her, whose face was a mask of confusion, slowly turned around. He looked from the high-ranking officer to the woman he'd been harassing. She returned the salute calmly, a simple, practiced motion. "At ease," she said. The officer nodded. "Shall we?" She turned her head slightly, her eyes landing on the man. "You asked if I belonged here," she said, her voice even and level. She then gestured toward the officer and his escorts. I was invited. It was the officer who spoke next, his voice resonating with authority. For clarity, he announced to the silent room, "This is Commander Rachel Hayes. Joint Operations. Federal Authority." The man's face drained of all color. The smirk, the aggression, it all melted away, replaced by a pale, slack-jawed shock. Phones, which had been held cautiously, were now fully raised, recording every second of his public humiliation. Commander Hayes turned to face him directly. "You pushed me," she said. Her voice was still calm, not threatening, simply stating a fact. Twice, she let the words hang in the air. "But this bar is off base," she continued, "so this ends here." She took a single step closer, just enough for him to feel the shift in the air, the sheer weight of her presence. "Next time," she said softly, her voice for his ears alone, "don't test people who don't need to prove anything." Then, she turned away. The officer held the door open for her, and she walked out into the night, her escorts following behind. The bar remained silent long after they left. The music didn't come back on. The laughter didn't return. There was only the sound of a man staring at his own hands, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him in a room full of witnesses. Humiliation changes sides fast. Have you ever been disrespected, pushed aside, or made to feel small simply because someone thought you were powerless? Because they judged you on your appearance and assumed you were nobody? You are not alone. So many of us have faced that moment where someone else's ego tries to diminish our worth. Think back to that bar. That man wasn't just being rude, he was feeding on a perceived weakness. He saw a woman alone and assumed she was an easy target. He saw her silence not as strength, but as submission. What he failed to understand is that true power, real authority, doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to shout or shove or seek validation. It simply is. Commander Hayes didn't need to flash a badge or raise her voice. Her power was internal. It was in her calm demeanor, her control, her patience. She knew who she was, and she knew her backup was on the way. She wasn't playing his game. She was waiting for hers to begin. This story resonates because it taps into a universal desire for justice. We've all wished for that moment when the tables turn, when the bully is exposed, and when underestimation is met with undeniable truth. It's the satisfaction of seeing someone get exactly what they deserve, not through violence or revenge, but through the quiet, overwhelming revelation of reality. The silence that fell over that bar was more powerful than any shouting match could ever be. It was the sound of a false reality shattering. The man's power was built on a fragile foundation of assumptions, and with one salute, it all came crashing down. His friends weren't laughing anymore. The onlookers weren't whispering for her to leave. They were all witnesses to his downfall. His humiliation wasn't just about being wrong. It was about being so profoundly, publicly, and spectacularly wrong. He had picked a fight he couldn't win, not because she was physically stronger, but because she operated on a level he couldn't even comprehend. If this story hit home for you, if you felt that surge of satisfaction when that salute clicked into place, let us know. Like this video and subscribe for more stories about quiet authority and hidden strength. And tell us in the comments below, have you ever been completely underestimated in public, and what happened? We want to hear your stories. Thanks for watching.